Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel for a brand new mystery with Molly. If you are new around here, if you have never seen my face on your screen before, then hi, my name is Molly and I post true crime videos like this every single week. So if you think that that is something that you might want to stick around for, then please do subscribe. And don't forget to switch on the little notification bells that YouTube will let you know whenever I post a new video. This week we are going to be talking about the solved case of Janell Carwell. She was a bright and beautiful young girl who just suddenly went missing, believe it or not, on her birthday. I say this case is solved, but technically it's not officially in the eyes of the law anyway. The police do believe that they know exactly who was responsible for what happened to Janell. However, they are yet to go to trial. This is still an ongoing case. But quickly before we get into it, I would just like to say a huge thank you to NordVPN for kindly sponsoring this section of the video. A VPN is a virtual private networking service that allows you to access the internet safely by protecting your personal data and hiding your IP address from potential hackers. I've personally been using NordVPN for over a year now. In my opinion, it is the best VPN service out there. It's so easy to use. It's the fastest VPN. You can use it on so many of your devices and it's available to use on a variety of platforms. It works on Windows, Android, iOS, macOS, Linux. With NordVPN, you can mask your location. You can change your country to give the impression that you are somewhere else in the world. And this comes with so many different benefits. Not only does it massively help to protect your online identity, but it also allows you to access websites that are not accessible in your region. For example, with a VPN, you can access different countries' Netflix libraries. Say you are from the UK and you want to watch a film that isn't available on the UK Netflix but is available on the American one, you can use the NordVPN map to make it seem like you are in the US, meaning you can use the US Netflix. Or say you are going on holiday, you're traveling abroad and you don't want to miss your favorite TV shows, you can change your location to the country that you're from so that you can stay home virtually. A VPN would also be really useful for those of you that are into gaming. You can game securely with a VPN, and if a game that you want isn't available in your country, you can change your location so that you can buy it. I use NordVPN all the time, especially whilst I'm researching. Often when I'm covering a case from another country, the news articles are blocked in my region. So of course, I'll just change my location and then I can read them. It's a godsend. So if you would like to try NordVPN yourself, and I highly recommend that you do, then you can go to nordvpn.com/Molly to get a 2-year plan with a huge discount plus 1 additional month for free. And it's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. They are also currently offering a Nord security bundle deal where users can have access to NordVPN, NordPass and NordLocker. So if you're interested in that, again, make sure you go to nordvpn.com/Molly. The link will also be in the description box. Again, thank you so much to NordVPN for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. Thank you to you guys for always supporting the sponsors on this channel, and now let's just get into the case. So for this week's case, we are going back about 5 years now to the spring of 2017 in Augusta, which is a city located in the state of Georgia in the US. And this is Janell Carwell. She was a 16-year-old girl who lived in Augusta with her family. Janell had literally just turned 16 when this case happened. Her birthday was the 17th of April 2001, and her full name was actually Latanya Janell Carwell. However, I believe most people in her life just called her Janell. Janell's mother was called Tanya, so I think she may have been named after her mum, you know, Tanya, Latanya. And I'm not entirely sure whether Janell's biological father was really in the picture. I don't know if Janell had any contact with him, but she did have a stepfather. Her mother was married to a man named Leon Tripp. They got married about 2 years earlier in 2015. And so Janell lived in a house with her mother Tanya Tanya, her stepfather Leon, and also her younger siblings. She had a little sister and her name was Tanisha. Janell was described by those that knew her as being a very, very loving and caring young girl who was incredibly bright. She was very intelligent. She did really well in school. She attended the T.W. Josie Comprehensive School in Augusta, and she was a very good student, an honor student actually, so she got really high grades. So she really could have done anything in life. She could have been good at any job, but she had decided that she wanted to be a doctor when she was older. That was the career path that she wanted to go down. She wanted to study medicine and she wanted to help people. But sadly, her dreams of becoming a doctor would never come true, because in April of 2017, Janell Carwell just suddenly disappeared. As I said at the start of the video, Janell Carwell actually disappeared on her birthday, the day of her 16th birthday. The 17th of April 2017. She had literally just turned 16 when she went missing. And the day before this, so the 16th of April 2017, she was just at home with her family and also some of her friends, and they were having a little party, a little barbecue or cookout to celebrate Janell's birthday, and also because that day it was Easter Sunday, and by all accounts Janell had a really nice time. She was happy, she seemed to enjoy herself. It was the perfect way to commemorate the occasion. Later that evening, after all the party guests had left, Janell and her family went to bed. However, in the early hours of the morning, I believe it was around 1:30 a.m. on the 17th of April, so literally an hour and a half into her 16th birthday, Janell was woken up. She was awoken by her stepfather, Leon Tripp. You see, that night, Leon had been woken up himself by one of his friends. A friend of his had rung him to ask for his help. This friend had had some trouble with his vehicle and he had broken down in an area called Clarks Hill in South Carolina, which is just under 20 miles away from Augusta. It's roughly a 30-minute drive. So as soon as he got this call from his friend, Leon jumped out of bed and he was about to leave to go and help him. But he realized that he was going to struggle to find his friend because he didn't really know where he was going, and also his phone didn't have like a built-in GPS thing on it. He couldn't use his phone to help with directions. I think he had quite an old phone, and so he decided to wake his stepdaughter Janell up to ask if she could come with him, because Janell had a newer phone, she had a GPS on it, and also, you know, she was a teenage girl, she was always on her phone, so she was very good at technology, so she would have known how to use it. So he woke Janell up, he asked her if she could come with him to South Carolina, and she said yes, she agreed. And so Leon told his wife, Janell's mother, Tanya, where they were headed. Unfortunately, Tanya couldn't go with them because she was pretty sick at the time. She actually had cancer in both her brain and her lungs, so she obviously needed her rest. And so Leon and Janell went alone. They left the house. However, they never returned home. Neither of them, neither Janell nor her stepfather Leon, they just didn't come back. And when Tanya Tripp realized that her husband and daughter were not home, they hadn't come home, she was immediately concerned. And this concern only grew when she began trying to ring them, both of them. She rang both their phones multiple times and neither of them answered. And this was not like them at all. Leon and Janell would not have just been ignoring Tanya on purpose. So Tanya had a really, really bad feeling about this. And so less than 24 hours after they left to go to South Carolina, Tanya contacted 911 and she reported her partner Leon and daughter Janell as missing. Once the police received this report, the search for Leon and Janell quickly began. The police began trying to trace them. They appealed to the public for information. Family and friends were taking to social media to try and spread awareness of this case. And Tanya Tanya herself was very, very involved in these social media appeals. She actually went live on Facebook, I believe, and she just said that she needed them home. She needed her baby Janell home because they had never ever been apart from each other for this long before. As well as the appeals, people were also raising money for a reward. A reward was offered to anyone with any information regarding Leon and Janell's whereabouts. Everyone was doing everything that they could to try and solve this case and find Leon and Janell. Not just the police, but also the local community too. They were eager to help in any way that they could, and they were supporting Tanya Tripp so much during this very, very difficult time. They were sending her love and praying for her and her family. But despite everyone's best efforts, they just could not find them. As the days and the weeks went by, Leon and Janell were still nowhere to be found. It was as if they had just vanished into thin air. But then, towards the end of April 2017, so this was about a fortnight after they went missing, there was a development in the case, a pretty big development. The police found something. It was Leon Tripp's vehicle, his white truck that he and Janell left in that night. It was found roughly a mile away from their house in Augusta. However, Leon and Janell were not inside. No one was. It looked as though the truck had been abandoned for some reason. So it seemed as though maybe the two of them didn't make it very far before something happened to them. They never made it to their destination, Clarks Hill in South Carolina. And this was confirmed when the police began tracing both Leon and Janell's mobile phones. Their phone data showed that they were not in South Carolina. As part of this missing persons inquiry, the police also had a look through Janell's social media, obviously because she was a 16-year-old girl. She was on her social media all the time. So they checked to see if she had been on it in the time that she was missing, but she hadn't, not once. There had been no activity on any of her social media profiles. But going back to Leon's white truck that was abandoned, after the police found it, they did obviously search the truck to see if maybe they could find anything in there that could suggest where he might have gone. They also searched the truck for any signs of a violent struggle, any blood, but again, nothing. There was nothing to indicate what might have happened to Janell and Leon. So even though finding the truck was a big development in the case, it didn't really provide the police with any clues. However, it wasn't actually long after they discovered the vehicle that there was yet another development in the case. By this point, obviously, this case was pretty big news. It was all over the news because of the police appeals. The police needed to make sure that the public knew to look out for these two missing people. And shortly after Leon's white truck was found abandoned, the police started to get quite a few tips from different members of the public saying that they believed they had recently seen Leon Tripp alive. They had seen him in another part of Georgia, in Atlanta, which is over a 2-hour drive away from Augusta. However, when they saw him, he was alone. He wasn't with his stepdaughter Janell. So then where was she? Where was Janell, and why wasn't she with Leon? As soon as the police received these reported sightings, they just got a really bad feeling. They were suddenly so suspicious of Leon Tripp. They obviously previously thought that both Leon and Janell were missing people and that something bad, something sinister might have happened to both of them. But now that Leon had been seen alive without Janell, they started thinking, what if that wasn't the case after all? What if Janell was just the one in danger? What if Leon had something to do with his stepdaughter's disappearance? What if he abducted her that night and did something to her, and now maybe he was on the run? Maybe he abandoned his truck and travelled 2 hours away to Atlanta because he was in hiding. It was found that Leon did actually have friends and acquaintances in Atlanta, so perhaps he was staying with them and trying to stay under the radar. And the police's concerns and their suspicions of Leon only grew enormously, in fact, when they actually took a deeper look into his past, what they discovered was that Leon Tripp had a lengthy criminal history and a background of violence. He had been to prison, I believe, a couple of times in his life for committing crimes such as assault, aggravated assault, theft, stalking, and also cruelty to children. It turns out that he actually met Janell's mother, Tanya, whilst he was in prison. This was when he had been convicted of aggravated assault. The two, Leon and Tanya, began writing letters to each other whilst he was behind bars. She would go and visit him, and they quickly began seeing each other. And it wasn't long before they were engaged and married. They actually got married whilst he was still behind bars. And when he was eventually let out of prison in 2015, he moved straight in with Tanya and her two daughters, Janell and Tanisha. So after the police received these reported sightings of Leon in Atlanta, this case really stepped up, and instead of being classed as a missing person, Leon Tripp was now classed as a wanted man by the police, and he was wanted for kidnapping. They now truly believed that he abducted his stepdaughter Janell that night. That whole story about him going to help a friend in South Carolina was clearly a lie, and so they had an arrest warrant, and they needed to find him fast because maybe there was a chance that Janell was still alive. Perhaps he was holding her hostage somewhere. Although his wife Tanya, Janell's mother, just refused to believe the police's theory that Leon was involved in Janell's disappearance. She just outright refused to believe it. She was completely adamant that Leon was innocent. The police must have gotten it wrong. But anyway, the hunt for Leon continued. The police were once again appealing to the public for any information regarding his current location, and of course the searches were really focused in Atlanta, the place where he had last been seen. And then on the 23rd of May 2017, over a month after he and his stepdaughter Janell disappeared, the police finally found him. They received a report that Leon had been seen at a U-Haul facility, a U-Haul depot in Atlanta. So as soon as they had this information, the police went straight there and they surrounded the depot so that he had no chance of escaping, nowhere left to run. And thankfully this report, this tip-off, was correct. He was at this depot. The officers had found him. However, he was not by himself. Unbelievably, right there with him was his wife, Tanya Tripp. She wasn't in Augusta where she and Leon and her kids lived. She was with him in Atlanta. And of course, as I'm sure you can imagine, the police were completely shocked by this and also just so confused. They had been looking for Leon for weeks and weeks, and now it seemed as though this whole time Tanya just knew where he was and she didn't tell the police. So Tanya was with Leon, but still there was no sign of 16-year-old Janell. And it was at this point that detectives started thinking, wait, was Tanya in on this? Did she know more about this whole situation, about Janell's disappearance, than she had been letting on? Did she maybe even have a part in it, in her own daughter's disappearance? So the police asked Tanya what was going on. Why was she here with Leon in Atlanta? And she basically said that this whole situation was purely coincidental. I believe she claimed that she had decided to travel down to Atlanta herself to try and find Leon and her daughter, and she said that during her journey as she was driving, she just happened to spot Leon on the side of a road, and so she picked him up, and then shortly after this was when the police found them both together at that U-Haul depot. But to be honest, I don't think the police believed this story even for a second. I mean, it's so far-fetched, isn't it? It's so unrealistic. You're telling me that all of the police officers that have been searching for Leon for weeks by this point hadn't been able to find him, but Tanya just happened to come across him by accident on the side of a road. Really? Of course the police didn't believe it, and so they actually made the decision not just to arrest Leon, but also arrest Tanya Tripp too. Following their arrest, Leon was charged with kidnapping and Tanya was charged with hindering the apprehension of a criminal. And when the news broke that both of them had been arrested and charged, people just couldn't believe it. They could not believe it. I imagine the local community must have felt just so confused and also betrayed, so betrayed by Tanya especially. This whole time, they had been there for her. Like I said earlier, they were supporting her, they were sending her lots of love because they felt so sorry for her. And now it was looking like she had a part in this, whatever this was. She had a part in whatever had happened to Janell. It was insane. The detectives interviewed Tanya, I believe, multiple times after she was arrested, but apparently she never really stuck to the same story. She kept changing it. Her stories were never consistent, so it was clear that she was lying. As for Leon, his story when the police questioned him was that he had nothing to do with Janell's disappearance, and he claimed that the last time he saw his stepdaughter, she was alive. Leon said that on the night that they went missing, the 17th of April 2017, they headed straight to Atlanta. They didn't go to Clarksville in South Carolina where his friend had supposedly broken down. So he had clearly lied about that. That story was fake. And I don't know if Leon told the police why he and Janell even headed to Atlanta in the first place. But anyway, he said that they went to Atlanta and once they arrived, he gave Janell some money and he told her to use it to get a bus back to Augusta. And then they separated. Leon left Janell and he said that he hadn't seen her since then, since he gave her that money for the bus ticket. But again, the police didn't believe this account either. Just like Tanya's story, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It just doesn't add up. They were clearly both lying and they clearly had no intention of telling the police the truth. They were both compulsive liars. Do you know what the police soon found out actually about Tanya Tripp? So if you recall from earlier on in the video, I said that Tanya claimed that the reason she didn't go with Leon and Janell that night was because she was just too sick. She was too weak because she had cancer in her brain and her lung. Well, it turns out that that was just one big lie. Tanya didn't have cancer. She had been lying about that, which is just so twisted. After going back through the details of the case, the police also realised that Tanya had been trying to deceive the police and the detectives right from the beginning of the investigation. Obviously, when she reported her husband and daughter as missing, she told them the fake story about Leon's friend breaking down in South Carolina, and so they had gone out to help him. But of course, they never went to South Carolina, and so the police think that Tanya told them that to throw them off Leon's track so that they would focus their searches in South Carolina to buy Leon time. And because Janell still hadn't been found, because there was still no sign of her, the police strongly believed that she was probably dead and that she had been murdered. They obviously didn't know the exact circumstances surrounding her murder, like when it happened, exactly who did it, whether they did it together or just Leon carried out the murder when he took Janell that night and Tanya just knew about it and she helped him to cover it up. And they also didn't know the motive. The police had no idea why they did this, why they wanted to kill Janell, why a mother would want to do this to her own daughter. The circumstances and the reason why remained unclear, but as I said, the police were pretty certain that Janell was dead. What was previously just a missing persons case was now a homicide investigation. Now the police were searching for a body. And the following year, in March of 2018, so about 11 months after Janell disappeared, the police got the call that they had been waiting for. They received a call from a member of the public who said that they believed they had just found human remains. The man who found them said that he had noticed a bone sticking up out of the ground in the back garden of a home that was empty at the time. No one was living there, and this was in Augusta, the same place where Janell lived. The house where the remains were found was located on Golden Camp Road in Augusta. So as soon as the police received this call, they went to the scene and the remains were collected. I believe by this point they were pretty much just skeletal remains. This person had clearly been there. They had been dead for some time because they had decomposed, and so because of this, authorities had to use dental records to ID this person, and of course they were identified as being 16-year-old Janell Carwell. Janell had been buried in a shallow grave in the back garden of that vacant home in Augusta. Now, from what I can gather, because her body was so decomposed, the coroner couldn't determine a cause of death. There's no information online about an exact cause of death that I can find anyway, so my guess is either they don't know exactly how she died because of the decomposition, or they do know and they've just withheld that information from the media and the public for whatever reason. But of course it's clear from the fact that she had been hidden in a shallow grave that she had been murdered. So following the discovery of Janell's body, both Leon and Tanya Tripp were charged with her murder. I believe Leon was charged with first-degree murder and Tanya was charged with second-degree murder. They were also charged with concealing Janell's death, and Leon had a couple of other additional charges, including kidnapping with bodily injury and cruelty to children in the first degree. But despite the evidence against them, they both decided to plead not guilty to their charges, which meant that the case would have to go to trial, although it was decided that they would go to trial separately because prosecutors decided that they were going to try and seek the death penalty for Leon should he be convicted. However, as I understand it, neither of them have actually stood trial as of yet. Apparently their trials have kept getting just pushed back, and I think this has been for a variety of reasons. One of the main ones being COVID. Obviously many criminal court cases were pushed back and delayed because of the pandemic. It also keeps getting pushed back because apparently Leon Tripp keeps getting new attorneys assigned to his case. According to one source, he's had like 3 different sets of attorneys signed to his case. His legal team keeps changing. So that's been causing delays, and also there was a delay because in June of 2020, there was a huge development in this case. You see, in the summer of 2020, prosecutors filed a motion to have new evidence introduced in the case. Evidence which seemed to prove that Leon and Tanya had actually tried to kill Janell way before she actually died on 3 separate occasions as well. They had made an attempt on her life 3 times. Once in September of 2015, and then again 3 months later in December. And then the 3rd attempt was made in October of 2016, just 6 months before she disappeared in April of 2017. It was found that on these occasions, Leon and Tanya tried to hire a hitman to carry out Janell's murder, but for whatever reason, these attempts were unsuccessful. So for all of these reasons, Leon and Tanya are still yet to go to trial. They are currently in jail whilst they await trial, but from what I can gather, a trial date is still yet to be set for the 2 of them. So this is still an active case, and I will of course keep you guys updated when there are further developments. I just hope that this trial does happen soon. It must be agony for the rest of Janell's family and her friends to have to wait this long to see her killers face justice. Obviously, because this case is still active, there are still so many unanswered questions. The main still being why Leon and Tanya did this to Janell. Why did Tanya want her own daughter dead? I've read about a couple of different theories online during my research. Some people have speculated that maybe Leon Leon had been sexually abusing his stepdaughter Janell in the lead up to her death. Perhaps he had raped her and she was pregnant with his baby, and so he decided to cover this up by killing her, and Tanya was in on it. She also agreed that they needed to cover it up because if the police found out, then Leon would go back to prison and she would lose him. In her eyes, apparently it was better to lose her daughter than her convict husband. A theory that I haven't come across online but that crossed my mind whilst I was researching for this case was that maybe Janell knew that her mother was lying about having cancer. Maybe she found out and she threatened to tell people the truth, and so her and Leon killed her before she could do so. Who knows? It is all just speculation at this moment in time, but I would be really interested to hear what you guys think in the comments. I want to hear your opinions. But that is it for this case. That is the heartbreaking case of Janell Carwell. I know I literally just said it, but do let me know what you guys think about this case in the comments. Also let me know of any other cases that you would like to see me cover on this channel. Again, you can let me know down below, or alternatively I do have a case request form linked in my description box. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again next week for another mystery with Molly.